When the power goes out in the middle of winter, the first thing most people do is panic and reach for their backup generators and battery packs. They spend thousands of dollars on gear they'll never fully understand, and when the grid actually fails, half of it doesn't work the way they thought it would. But here's what almost nobody tells you. The people who survive extended blackouts without all that technology are using methods so simple, so forgotten, that they sound almost impossible to modern ears. I grew up watching my neighbor's family, old order people who'd chosen to live without electricity, keep their house warm through a January freeze that left the rest of us scrambling with frozen pipes and dying generators. They had no battery bank, no solar panels, no backup fuel tanks. What they had was knowledge, the kind of knowledge that used to be normal, the kind that disappeared the moment the power company showed up. By the end of this, I'm going to show you the exact 20 methods these communities use to survive blackouts that would cripple modern homes, and why every single one of them works better than the expensive equipment most people buy. The power company, the building industry, the appliance makers, none of them have an incentive to teach you this. Think about it. If every house could stay warm without electricity, the demand for grid power drops. If every family could preserve food and water without a fridge, you stop needing their equipment. So this knowledge didn't disappear by accident. It disappeared because it stopped being profitable. And the moment it stopped being profitable, it stopped being taught. I'm going to give you 20 of these tricks, not all at once. I'm going to break them into 3 groups: thermal tricks, water tricks, and food tricks. And I'm going to hold back one critical piece from each group until the second half of this video. That's where the real leverage is. Let's start with heat. Because when the power dies in winter, heat is survival. The first thing I got wrong when I was younger was thinking that blackout heating had to be complicated. I tried building a rocket mass heater with clay and brick and spent 6 weeks on something that barely raised the temperature. My father-in-law walked in, looked at it, and said I was overthinking it. He showed me something his grandmother had done in the 1950s that cost almost nothing and worked better. A simple, closed-loop heat recovery system using nothing but water, copper pipe, and gravity. Trick number 1 is the water jug thermal mass trick. Fill 5-gallon jugs with water, not just any water, but water you've heated either by sun exposure during the day or by burning something in a wood stove if you have one. Stack these jugs in the corner of your room. Water holds heat for hours. Those jugs will radiate warmth all night long, and because they're not exposed flame, they're safer than keeping a fire running in the house. You need about 40 gallons of heated water to keep a 10 by 10 foot room at 50 degrees for 8 hours. That's 8 jugs. Trick number 2 is the thermal flywheel principle. Before the grid goes down, and this matters, fill your bathtub, your sinks, and every container you have with water. Heat it if you can. When the power dies and you can't pump water anymore, that stored water becomes a thermal mass again. Sounds simple, but the math is brutal. One full bathtub holds 100 gallons. If you heat it to 130 degrees and let it cool naturally in a closed room, it will release enough heat to keep a small bedroom above 55 degrees for 12 hours. Trick number 3 is the window covering system that actually works. Not those cheap reflective blankets. I mean a dead simple layering method. Cardboard on the inside of your window frame, then a thin air gap. You can use furring strips, 1 by 2 inch wood pieces, then another layer of cardboard, and then a heavy blanket on the outside. The air gap is everything. It breaks the thermal bridge. A single window covered this way will lose less than half the heat of an uncovered window. Your front window and back door are probably bleeding 40% of your house heat right now. Cover them, and you've cut your heating load by a third. Trick number 4 is the room sealing method. You don't heat your whole house when the power's out. That's impossible without massive fuel. You heat one room, the master bedroom, the kitchen, wherever you'll actually be. Tape heavy plastic over doorways. Stuff rolled towels and blankets into gaps under doors and around baseboards. A 6-inch gap under a door is like leaving a window open. Seal a single room and you can maintain 60 degrees with nothing but body heat, a small fire, or a couple of those water jugs we talked about. Trick number 5 is the wind blocking perimeter. Most houses lose heat through their foundation line and at the connection between the wall and the ground. If you're not panicking and you're thinking ahead, pile leaves, straw, or even snow against the foundation line on the outside of your house before winter. 3 feet high, all the way around. This creates an insulation barrier that drops your heat loss through the ground by 15 to 20%. Sounds tiny, but when you're trying to survive on stored heat, every percentage point matters. Trick number 6 is the chimney closing method. If you don't have a working chimney, this doesn't apply. But if you do and you're not using a fire, that chimney is your enemy. A wide open chimney is basically asking for all your warm air to leave. Build a simple plug, a piece of plywood cut to fit inside the fireplace opening, with foam weather stripping around the edges. Seal it. When you need the chimney, you remove it. When you don't, you stop that leak. A single open chimney can cost you 8% of your heating load. Trick number 7 is the door gasket principle. Exterior doors lose heat like nothing else because the gaps between the door and the frame are often a quarter inch or more. Take a cheap door gasket kit, rubber tape with adhesive backing, and seal every edge. The total cost is usually $15. The heat savings over a winter where you lose power is hundreds of dollars, and in a true blackout scenario, it's survival. Now here's where most people get lost. They think heat is only about keeping fire going or insulating. They forget about the one thing that kills you faster than cold in a blackout: the wind chill inside your own house. Trick number 8 is the layered bedding method. You're not going to sleep under one thick blanket. You layer thin blankets. Cotton sheet, wool blanket, another sheet, another blanket, a quilt on top. The reason is physics. Each layer traps air, and air is an insulator. One heavy blanket compresses under your weight and loses insulation. Multiple thin layers trap more air pockets. A person under 6 layers of alternating sheets and blankets stays 8 to 10 degrees warmer than the same person under one equal thickness blanket. This works for clothing too. You're not wearing one thick coat. You're wearing a base layer, a mid layer, and an outer wind-blocking layer. Trick number 9 is the overnight hot water bottle trick. Before bed, fill a ceramic or metal bottle with hot water, boiled if you can manage it. Wrap it in cloth. Sleep with it. It will stay warm for 8 to 10 hours, radiating heat to your core while you sleep. Your body will use half the calories trying to stay warm if you have that heat source next to you. Over a winter, that saved calorie burn means you can survive on less food. Sounds small, but in a real survival scenario, calories matter. Trick number 10 is the cold room humidity method. Most people don't know this, but dry air feels colder than humid air at the same temperature. If your blackout room is dry, it will feel 5 to 8 degrees colder than it actually is. Hang wet towels in the room. Set out bowls of water. If you have a way to heat water, do that. Boiling water humidifies fast. A humid room at 50 degrees feels like a dry room at 55 to 57 degrees. Not huge, but again, in a blackout, these stack. I see a lot of prepper channels talking about backup generators and solar panels. And sure, if you have the money and you want that insurance, fine. But what they don't tell you is that a generator needs fuel, and fuel runs out. A solar panel needs sun, and sun doesn't shine at night. What these 10 thermal tricks do is give you security that doesn't depend on anything showing up. No supply chain, no logistics. Just knowledge and materials already in your house. Here's the part I've been holding back on the heat side. The thermal battery that almost nobody uses. If you have access to a basement, and in the Northeast and Midwest, most older homes do, your basement is naturally cooler. That's because it's in contact with the earth. Here's what you do. Before winter, fill the basement with barrels of water. 5-gallon food-grade buckets or full 55-gallon drums if you can manage them. Line them up. This is a thermal battery. In summer, the earth keeps them cool. In winter, they retain warmth because they're below ground. More importantly, if you have a wood stove on the first floor and the basement is only 1 floor down, you can run a simple thermosiphon loop. Copper or PVC pipe from near the stove down to the barrels and back up. The heat rises and circulates. No pump needed. Gravity does all the work. Those barrels stay warm, and that warmth radiates upward into the floors above. A 10,000-gallon thermal mass in your basement, that's about 75 full 55-gallon drums, will keep your house above 45 degrees for 3 weeks, even if the outdoor temperature is 10 degrees, with nothing but body heat and a small fire to feed it. I know that sounds impossible. Let me say it again with numbers. 10,000 gallons of water, cooled from 70 degrees to 45 degrees, releases roughly 2.5 million BTU. Spread that over 21 days, and you're getting about 2,000 BTU per hour into the house for free. A small wood stove puts out 30,000 to 40,000 BTU per hour. So the thermal battery is giving you maybe 5 to 10% of your heating need, but 5 to 10% is the difference between staying above 45 degrees and freezing. Now let's talk about water. Because when the grid goes down, water systems fail just as fast as heating does. Trick number 11 is the rainwater catchment gravity filter. Before the power goes out, and again, timing matters, you set up a system. A gutterless collection area, just a sloped surface, flowing into barrels, and then through a simple gravity filter made from PVC pipe filled with sand and activated charcoal. No pump, no electricity, just gravity. A single rain barrel system catching 2,000 gallons per rainstorm can keep a family of 4 in drinking and cooking water indefinitely if you space out your storms. If you're in a dry region and don't get rain, you're using stored water that you've prepared ahead of time. Trick number 12 is the thermal solar shower. A black painted barrel or bag left in the sun gets hot. I mean seriously hot, often 120 to 130 degrees by afternoon. Run water through black hose coiled in the sun, and you get hot water without electricity or fuel. Showers, washing clothes, warm drinking water in the morning. One simple black bag solar shower system costs $20 and produces enough hot water for a family of 4 to stay clean and warm. Trick number 13 is the toilet water composting system. This is the one people hate talking about, but here it is. When the sewer system fails, most homes will have one working toilet for maybe 3 or 4 days before the tank backs up or the water stops flowing. An old-school outhouse is gross, but a composting toilet isn't. You take a 5-gallon bucket, line it with a plastic bag, add dry leaves or sawdust to the bottom, do your business, cover it with more leaves or sawdust, and when it's full, you bury it or add it to a compost pile. The carbon material, leaves, sawdust, newspaper, neutralizes odor, breaks down waste, and creates compost. Multiple buckets rotated means one is always decomposing while the others are in use. No water used, no smell, no backup. Trick number 14 is the water heating thermal siphon for showers. You know that cistern system I mentioned in the basement? Run a pipe from the warm water in that thermal battery up through the hot side of a shower head. You get warm water on demand, heated by the ground and the thermal mass. Not hot shower level warm, but 50 to 60 degree water warming up to 70 or 75 degrees is better than ice water. Trick number 15 is the hand pump well that nobody talks about. If you have a well on your property and electricity powers the pump, you're stuck when the power dies. But you can retrofit an old hand pump top onto your well casing. It costs about $200 for the pump and installation if you do it yourself. Every time you need water, you pump it. It's work, but it's water. Thousands of homes in rural areas have well pumps sitting idle that could be hand pumped in an emergency, and the owners don't even know it. The water side is more straightforward than heat, because water doesn't insulate, it just is. But here's the trick everyone misses. Water demand in a blackout is actually lower than people think. If you stop showering every day, if you're recycling gray water for toilet flushing, if you're collecting rainwater, your actual consumption might drop by 60%. Most families think they need a massive stored water supply when they really just need to stop wasting water and set up collection systems. Now comes the hardest part. Food. Trick number 16 is the root cellar replacement using your freezer. When the power dies, your freezer becomes a very expensive, very insulated box. Empty it out completely, throw away the refrigeration unit, and use it as an above-ground cold storage. Bury it halfway in the ground if you can, cover the top with hay or leaves, and it becomes a root cellar. It maintains around 40 to 45 degrees year-round without electricity. Put shelves in it. Store potatoes, carrots, apples, whatever you've preserved. You just converted a dead appliance into survival infrastructure. Trick number 17 is the jar and jar evaporative cooler. 2 ceramic pots, one inside the other, with wet sand filling the gap between them. Food sits in the inner pot. Wet sand evaporates, cooling the inner chamber to about 10 to 15 degrees below ambient temperature. So if it's 80 degrees outside, the inner pot is 65 to 70 degrees. A head of lettuce stays fresh for weeks. Butter stays solid. Not a freezer, but infinitely better than nothing. And it works without electricity in any climate. Trick number 18 is the salt preservation method that nobody teaches anymore. For meat, fish, anything protein, cover it in salt. Sea salt or regular salt. The salt draws out water, creates an environment where bacteria can't survive, and the meat lasts months. Dried saltfish hanging in a cool, dry place stays good for a year or more. Sounds medieval, but it works because it works. It's why humans preserved meat this way for 4,000 years before refrigeration. Trick number 19 is the fermentation trap. Fermented vegetables don't require refrigeration, and they're easier to make than people think. Cabbage, carrots, beets, anything. Chop it, salt it 2% by weight, pack it in a jar, cover it, and let it sit for 4 weeks. The salt and the fermentation prevent rot. The vegetables last 6 months in a cool storage area. A family that ferments 3 to 4 jars of vegetables per week has enough preserved food to get through a long winter. Plus, fermented food contains probiotics that keep your gut healthy, which matters when medical care isn't available. Here's what I tried first that didn't work. I bought a bunch of freeze-dried food and thought I was set. When the power actually went out for 2 weeks one January, I opened those packets and the food was bland, expensive, and honestly, I was sick of eating it by day 5. What actually worked was a combination of fermented vegetables from the fall, root vegetables in the buried freezer, smoked fish hanging in the shed, and flour and dried beans. Stuff that tasted like actual food. Stuff that fed my family without creating decision fatigue. The freeze-dried food lasted 2 weeks. The fermented vegetables and root storage lasted 3 months.